Hello, this is Ray Edwards from learncopy.com, and I would like in this presentation to look at and analyze the famous Wall Street Journal sales letter. Now, in doing some research and poking around on the internet, I find that there are a few copywriters who have commented on the Wall Street Journal sales letter, and so I not doing this presentation just to add to the noise. In fact, I have a unique perspective on the success of this sales letter and why it has been as successful as it has been. And I've not seen any other copywriter who shares my perspective, and that's the reason why I decided to do this video presentation and also to do my own analysis of this sales letter. Now, in terms of background, in case you're not familiar with the Wall Street Journal sales letter, of course you will be by the end of my analysis. But in terms of background, let's quickly go to the New York Times website, where they reported on the death of the writer of this sales letter, Martin Conroy. And it would give us a good background, to why, it is fruitful for us to actually do an analysis of this letter. So you see here we're at the New York Times website, and this was from published on December 22, 2006. And here it reports that Martin Conroy, 84, ad writer famous for mail campaign, is dead at 30. Is dead. Martin Conroy, advertising executive who, without recourse to glossy paper or fancy graphics, created one of the most enduring ad campaigns of all time, died on Thursday in Connecticut. He was 84. He lived in Madison and also in Florida. He succumbed to complications from cancer of the lung. Mr. Conroy's master work never appeared in newspaper or magazine, nor was it broadcast on television or radio. It was a letter, a simple 2-page letter, and it goes on to describe, how the letter was written, which we are going to do, so we would not do that here now. And it shows some commentary by different copywriters about the reason for the effectiveness of the letter, and as I said, I'm going to give my own analysis, and if you would like to, you can actually go to the New York Times article and read these analysis for yourself. Now, before we actually look at the Wall Street Journal sales letter and the reason for its success, at least from my perspective, there's a little tidbit fact that many copywriters are not particularly aware of, and that is the whole issue that the Wall Street Journal sales letter most likely was a swipe. I mean, there's no way for anyone to tell. The writer of this letter, Martin Conroy, is now dead. He's in his grave now for about 10 years, and there's no way for anyone to actually go and ask him if you actually swiped this letter. But when you look at another sales letter written by Bruce Barton, most people think it's written by Bruce Barton. I have no way of confirming this, and it is called "The Story of Two Men Who Fought in the Civil War." Now, this letter ran, I think it was March of 1919, and if you Google it, you can actually find the original, what the original ad looked like, which I did here. It was published in Popular Science. Okay, so here you have Popular Science. I think this is page 3 on Popular Science, and it has here the ad, the original ad. Okay, you have the picture of the two men here in the Civil War and the difference in their story. Okay, the story of two men who fought in the Civil War from a certain little town in Massachusetts. Two men went out for the Civil War and it basically asks, what made the difference. So this is the original ad as it ran. Now this ad was also used as an example in a book called Advertising Copy by George Hotchkiss. Okay, I think this was on page 11. This is actually on page 11 of the book. And this book by George Hotchkiss was actually published in 1949. Okay, it was actually published in 1949. So let's go back to my original letter. It was actually published in 1949. So it is very likely that Martin Conroy, the author for the copywriter for the Wall Street Journal sales letter, most likely, since it was a popular book in his day, copywriter's textbook in his day, might have used Hotchkiss' book and actually read this original letter, and this is where he got the idea from for the Wall Street Journal sales letter. Anyway, let's look at it and make our own judgment in this regard. Okay, so first I'm going to do a quick analysis of Bruce Barton's 1919 sales letter, and we're going to compare it to the Wall Street Journal sales letter to make an assessment to say whether this was a swipe or not. Okay, so Bruce Barton's letter says, the story of two men who fought in a civil war. From a certain little town in Massachusetts, two men went to the Civil War. Each of them had enjoyed the same educational, notice here, the same educational advantages, and so far as anyone could judge, their prospect of success were equally good. One man accumulated a fortune, and the other spent his last years almost entirely dependent on his children for support. He has had luck, the town explained. He never seemed to catch hold of after the war, but the other man did not lose his grip. He seemed to experience no difficulty in catching hold after the war. The difference in the two men was not a difference of capacity, but a difference in decision. One man saw after the war tide of expansion, trained himself for executive opportunity, and so swam with the tide. The other merely drifted. Okay, the history of these two men will be repeated in hundreds of thousands of lives in the next few decades, in the next few months rather. So here we see the plot of the story being these two men from the same town, and the keyword there is same. They're from the same town. They have the same opportunities. They have the same opportunities, but at one point their lives branch off, one to the right, one to the left. One was successful, one was not very successful, and the reason is given for their success and lack of success as being their lack of decision making, the difference in the decisions that they made. Okay, now the history of these two men will be repeated in hundreds of thousands of lives. Now, after every war comes a great success and great failure. So now the letter is going to go now into explaining what made the difference in these men's life, and we're going to see that the product that is being sold here will become the hero and will become the reason for the success of one versus the failure of the other. So it says, is your future worth half an hour of serious thought? If it is, then take down a history of the United States. You will discover this unmistakable truth. Opportunity does not flow in a steady stream like a river. It comes and goes in great tides. There was a high tide in the Civil War, and then there came the panic of 1907. There was a high tide. There is a high tide now, and those who seize it need not fear what would happen. When the tides recedes, the wisest men in this country are now putting themselves beyond the reach of fear into the executive positions that are indispensable. Okay, now, so weak men go down in critical years and strong men grow stronger. So it says, if you are in your 20s or your 30s or your early 40s, there probably never will be another such critical year for you as this year, 1919. Looking back on it 10 years hence, you will say that was the turning point. Thousands of wise and thoughtful men of this country have anticipated the coming of this period and prepared for it. And they have trained, and here we now get the introduction to the product that they are selling, and it is that they have trained themselves for positions which business cannot do without through the Alexander Hamilton Institute Modern Business Course and Service. So this now becomes the hero of the story, and of course it is a product that is being pushed. It is a product that is being promoted or sold. And it says here that the institute is the American Institute, and hold on to that because we're going to see it again. The institute is the American Institute which has proved its power to lift men into higher executive positions. Now, these men have already decided to go forward, and it goes on to list giving social proof, show how many men have used it before. 75,000 men. They have been enrolled in institute, and how many of them became presidents of corporations, how many became vice presidents, how many became secretaries and treasurers and managers and accountants and so forth. Men like these have proved the institute's power. Brainerd became president of Hammermill Paper Company, and it goes on to show the prominent men, who have made use of the Alexander Hamilton Institute for Modern Business course. Okay, men who have trained themselves to seize opportunities will make these after-war years tremendously. You too can make the count for you. You too can make them count for you. Then send for this book. There's a vision in it for you and for your future. To meet the needs of thoughtful men, the Alexander Hamilton Institute has published a 112-page book called Forging Ahead in Business. It is free. The coupon will bring it to you. Send for your copy of Forging Ahead in Business now while your mind is on it. You could not seize the chance that came in 65 and 98, but it will be your fault if 10 years from now you say, I could have gone on to success with 75,000 others, and I did not even investigate. Fear of loss and regret. Fill in the coupon and mail it. Okay, so we see therefore then that the plot of this letter has the idea of two young men who grew up under similar circumstances, fought in the same war, came home to their community. One was very successful, the other wasn't very successful, and the reason for their success is given for the Alexander Hamilton Institute Modern Business course. And then comes the call to action. Then comes first proof, social proof of those persons who have made use of this course and how well they are doing now. And calling on you now to know that 1919, the year in which the ad was published, is a year when the tide is high, and you should take advantage of this particular opportunity, and you can simply do that by making the small step of sending for this, okay, of sending for this book. Okay, now let us go now and look at the Wall Street Journal letter. Let's look at the Wall Street Journal letter, and here's where I'm going to give my own view, as I mentioned before, of why this letter did so well. And many copywriters do not realize that this was actually, as I'm arguing here, a swipe from an earlier sales letter. And there are other copywriters as well too, who recognizes this, and think that this was Martin Conroy was a swipe from Bruce. And so we're going to see the things that are common. But apart from the fact that this letter being a swipe, okay, from that Martin Conroy made a swipe from Bruce Barton, I'm going to argue here that Bruce Barton was not original in this respect as well too. Now, I like to admit here that I have a pet peeve. The pet peeve I have is where many times modern day or even 20th century copywriters have been attributed or with some kind of a discovery, or they have been attributed with some kind of a persuasion techniques, and someone will say, well, you're using this person method, that person method, and the techniques of persuasion are very, very, very old. And so many times when I see someone says, oh, this was the person who came up with this particular idea, I kind of a shift in my chair, because I know that this technique of persuasion predates this person by thousands of years. Okay, and I'm going to show here in a while, why I said this. Okay, now let's look at the Wall Street Journal says letter, and we're going to look at this in detail, and I'm going to say why I think that this letter has been so successful, and being mailed, for almost 3 decades, being mailed for 28 years. I think this was used as a control by the Wall Street Journal until I think it was in 2003 when it was beaten with a similar letter, and now that letter is being used. Okay, so it starts, dear reader. On a beautiful late spring afternoon, 25 years ago, 2 young men graduated from the same college. Okay, see the similarity with Barton's letter. Okay, same. Okay, 2 young men. Okay, and same. In Barton's case, of course, they didn't graduate from college, but they fought in the same civil war. Okay, so on a beautiful late spring afternoon, 25 years ago, 2 young men graduated from the same college. They were very much alike, same. These 2 young men both were better than average students, both were personable, and both, as young college graduates, were filled with ambitious dreams for the future. Now here we see that the letter is very simple. It's a simple story, almost like a fairy tale. Long time ago, once upon a time. It starts out on this beautiful late spring afternoon, 25 years ago. And I do not know whether the mention of spring was accidental or intentional, but if it was intentional, this would be quite brilliant, because, spring is often associated with a renewal of life. Okay, so not only is this story taking place, not only is this story taking place in spring, but these men are also in the spring of their years. They're in the springtime of their years. Okay, so everything about the start of the letter is indicating that here are 2 men in the spring season of their life, and it is the time when they are making decisions that is going to lead to consequences later on in their life. Okay, so later on, the summer and the winter and so forth is going to come, but it is this spring when ideas are planted. It is spring when seeds are planted. It is spring when when new life is bursting forth. That is the time that this story takes place. Okay, so so Conroy draws you in just by the first line, by giving you a sense of expectation, a sense of joy, a sense of newness, a sense, that of rebirth. This is fresh. Okay, this is the beginning of the story. It is, it is fresh. Things are well. Expectations are high. Okay, and it says that these were 2 men having basically the same advantages. Now, he cuts now to recently now, where he says that these 2 men returned to their college for their 25th reunion. So the 25th reunion now is presented now as harvest time. So the springtime was a time when they planted. Now the 25th anniversary, or the 25th reunion, is now the time of their harvest. This is the time at which they are going to reap, what they have sown in the spring. They were very much alike. Again, he's emphasizing again that, that they were very much alike. How? Well, they were happily married. They had 3 children, and both, it turned out, had gone to work for the same Midwest manufacturing company and were still there. Okay, remember as well too that in the Barton letter, we had these 2 men who just came from the Civil War, and they also were working for the same company, except one was at the head of the company and the other was at a junior, was in a junior position. Okay, so they are the same, except for one difference. And here we find again in this letter as well too, they are the same, except for one difference. Okay, so here it says, but there was a difference. One of the men was a manager of a small department of the company, and the other was its president. The question now is asked, well, what made the difference? He says, have you ever wondered, as I have, what makes this kind of difference in people's life? It isn't always a native intelligence or talent or dedication. It isn't that one person wants success and the other doesn't. The difference lies in what each person knows and how he or she makes use of that knowledge. Now, what I find that is brilliant about this letter compared to Barton's letter, okay, what I find is brilliant about this is that in asking the question, this is really basically asking a question as well too. In asking the question, what made the difference, he doesn't tell you right away what makes the difference. He wants you to convince your own self about what makes the difference. So he actually delays answering that question by actually asking you more questions. So what made the difference? Then he asks, have you ever wondered, as I have, what makes this kind of difference in people's lives? So he's join in the reader by this question. It isn't always native intelligence or talent or dedication. It isn't that one person wants success and the other doesn't. Now, the other thing, apart from drawing you in with that question and not answering the question up front as well too, it gets you thinking. It gets you to persuade your own self. It places you now in the position where you are saying, yes, I agree with you. Okay, so he now gets you on that yes slide, on that yes train. He's getting you to be in agreement with him, which is very important at the start of any sales letter. You want to know that you're on the same place and you're on the same plane. If you're going to persuade that person, you cannot start with a place at which you are different to that person. Okay, in persuasion, you always try to start on the same even ground. And eventually, if you are different, then you can show where your opinion or values or so forth is different to this person if you hope to persuade them. But of course, you cannot start with where you're different. The person will not even give you an ear. Okay? So we find here then that instead of answering the question right away, he asks you another question. And he tells you something from which you would agree. Now, the other deeper psychological reason why you would agree with this position as well too is that, deep down in our own hearts, okay, we know other people who, as far as we're concerned, have similar advantages that we had. They were in the same class with us. They grew up in the same neighborhood like us, and yet they have done better than we have done, Or the opposite might even be true. We might even know people who may not have been as talented as we are, but yet they have made a lot of money. And in your mind, you're kind of wondering, wait, what really made a difference? How is it that this person with less talent, with less ability, have been so successful and I haven't been as successful as they are? Okay, so in a way, in a way, he's almost addressing that kind of a universal comforting thought that it's not your fault. Okay, so in other words, then it is not that this person has more talent than you. It is not this person have more advantages than you. It's just it is just a matter of that they know something that you don't know, and that is forgiving. That is forgiving. It is easy for us to forgive ourselves if we don't have a particular if we don't know a particular secret, if we don't have a particular knowledge. So in that way, it is comforting to us to know, well, it's not that that person is better than I am. It's just that, they know something that I don't know. They have some secret that I don't have. Okay, and that is what that is how he draws in the reader here. He said the difference lies in what each person knows and how he or she makes use of that knowledge. And so you can breathe a sigh of relief and you say, oh, it's got to be that. Oh my, I know that person who is doing much better than I am. It is not that they are better than I am. It's just that they know something that I don't know. Okay, so it comforts you in thinking, well, the reason for your lack of success is that there's some secret knowledge that you don't know as yet. But once you know the secret knowledge, once you get a hold of the secret knowledge, because all of the other factors are equal, you are going to be just as successful as well too. Okay, but he doesn't say it directly. Okay, he gets you to assume that. Okay, and that is why I'm writing to you, to people like you, about the Wall Street Journal. For that is the whole purpose of the journal. Okay, now remember I said in the letter a while ago that, remember how we talk about he switched from the Wall Street Journal to the journal. And in this sense, the is a very powerful word in that way. The Wall Street Journal is not just a journal, it is the journal. In other words, then, it's his way of saying it is the #1 journal. Okay, remember when we said here as well too, and his was even capitalized. We go back to the Civil War. If you go back to the Civil War letter, when he was referring to the he capitalized it when he was referring to the Alexander Institute. Okay, he actually capitalizes it. The institute is the American institution which has proved its power. Okay, it's very powerful. Okay, not just saying that it is just another one. It is the. Okay, that definite article there shows that there's none like it. So he's saying that the Wall Street Journal, is the journal. Is the journal. Okay, so he says here it is the only one you see for this purpose to. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, the difference lies in each person knows thing, and that is why I'm writing to you about the Wall Street Journal. For that is the whole purpose of the journal, to give its readers knowledge that they can use in business. Okay, now you see the Wall Street Journal is a unique publication. It's the country's only national business daily. Each business day is put together by the world's largest staff of business news experts, and it goes on to explain the virtues and the features and benefits of the Wall Street Journal. Okay, it's put together by by experts in their field, world largest staff and business news experts. Each business day, the journal pages include a broad range of information of interest and significance to business-minded people, no matter where it comes from, not just stocks and finance, but anything and everything in the whole fast-moving world of business. The Wall Street Journal gives you all the business that you need and when you need it. Then it goes on to talk about knowledge is power. Now, right now, I am reading page 1 of the journal. It combines all the important news of the day with in-depth feature reporting. Every phase of the business news is covered, from articles on inflation, wholesale prices, car prices, tax incentives for industries, to major developments in Washington and elsewhere. And there is page after page inside the journal filled with fascinating and significant information that's useful to you. A daily column on personal money management helps you become a smarter saver, better investor, a wiser spender. There are weekly columns on small business, marketing, real estate, technology, regional development. If you never read the Wall Street Journal, you cannot imagine how useful it can be to you. Much of the information that appears in the journal appears nowhere else. The journal is printed in numerous plants across the US so that you can get it early and for business. Then it goes on to tells you what the price is. Great introductory price, $28 subscription. Put our statement to the proof by subscribing for the next call to action. 13 weeks for just $28. This is a shortest subscription term we offer and a perfect way to get acquainted with the journal. To get acquainted with the journal, or you may prefer to take advantage of a longer term subscription for greater savings. An annual subscription of $107 saves you $20 off. The journal cover price, our best 2 years for $185 saves you $69. Then says simply fill out the enclosure order card, mail it in the postpaid envelope provided. The Wall Street Journal guarantee, should the journal not measure up to your expectation, okay, risk reversal. You may cancel this trial arrangement. Okay, again, telling you again, it's not permanent. At any point and receive a refund for the undelivered portion of your subscription. If you feel as if we do that this is a fair and reasonable proposition, then you will want to find out without delay. The Wall Street Journal can do for you what it has done for millions of readers. So please mail the enclosed order card now, and we will start serving you immediately. About those two college graduates mentioned in the beginning of the letter, they were graduated from the same college, and together they got started in the business world. So what made their lives in business different? Knowledge, useful knowledge, and its application. Now, here is the point at which this letter is particularly superior to the Civil War letter. Now, we note here that up to this point, the letter hasn't mentioned anywhere at all that the successful business person actually read the Wall Street Journal. Basically, all it tells you is that the reason why one college graduate was successful and the other wasn't successful was because of knowledge. Okay? You say the difference here lies in each person knows and how he or she makes use of that knowledge. Okay? Then it goes on and tie in the Wall Street Journal with this particular knowledge. But up to this point, it doesn't say that the successful person uses the Wall Street Journal. And that is the beauty as well of this piece, because it gets you to assume that the person reads the Wall Street Journal without telling you that the person reads the Wall Street Journal. In other words, then, if I can get you to think something without telling you that particular thing, that level of persuasion is much deeper and longer lasting than if I tell you to do something. Okay? So in other words, then, if I can tell you something that would result in you giving me $10, okay, that is much more powerful form of persuasion than for me to say, give me $10, than to actually ask you for that $10. In other words, it's almost as if you are persuading someone to do something, and even before you ask them to do it, they are begging you to allow them to do this particular thing. And so this is, whereas we find in the first letter, where we find in the Civil War letter, that the writer, the copywriter there actually says that the person used the Alexander Hamilton business study courses. Here, Conroy doesn't mention at all that this person, does use the Wall Street Journal. Simply ties, says knowledge is the difference, and says that you can get this knowledge from the Wall Street, you can get this knowledge from the Wall Street Journal. Now, another observation as well here as well, you'll find as well, is that the structure of the letter. The structure, the letter is written like one large, nested loop. In the sense that he starts by giving us the story. Then in the middle of giving us the story, he tells us about the Wall Street Journal, and then coming to the end now, he goes right back to the story of the graduates. Okay, so he starts the story, breaks off, and then finishes with the story. The story is where the real emotional appeal is, and where the decision is actually going to be brought. And whereas the features and benefits of the Wall Street Journal is like, you can consider that like the boring part of the letter. So he puts that in the middle. Okay. Psychological research have shown that we are more likely to remember the beginning of something and the end of something than the middle. So what it does is that it structures the letter so that all the features and benefits of the Wall Street Journal are actually placed in the middle of the letter, and the story of the story, which is where the real pull and emotional appeal is, where the real persuasive factor is placed at the beginning and at the end. Okay, so you go away thinking that, wow, if I want to be as successful as this particular young man who did so well, then I also need to subscribe to the Wall Street Journal as well. Okay, now Wall Street Journal as well. Okay, now. Of course, it tells you, gives you all the benefits and the features for the Wall Street Journal and so forth. That is, common, to most letter, without overselling it, the story still becomes central to this copy. Okay, the story is still central to the copy, and so he makes sure that he ends off with that. Okay, so it says knowledge, useful knowledge, and its application. An investment in success. I cannot promise you that success will be instantly yours if you start reading the Wall Street Journal, but I can guarantee that you will find the journal always interesting, always reliable, and always useful. So it is here, it's almost like he's backing off. Okay, he's backing off from actually telling you well, if you read the Wall Street Journal, you'll be as successful as this person. But it's already sold. It's too late. Okay, already have you hooked. Okay, so here in saying that I'm not going to promise you this, he's saying, he's actually saying it and taking it back at the same time. But I can guarantee that you will find the journal always interesting, always reliable, and always useful. And the PS, very important because one of the most read part of a letter. It says it's important to note that the journal's subscription price may be tax deductible. Of course, these are business people, and it's basically saying then that you actually get in the Wall Street Journal for free. Okay, not a week pitch at all for the PS. Okay, so it tells that it's, and note here again, he mentions the Wall Street Journal, but he goes on to shorten it to the journal, as I mentioned before. Here again, he says that the journal, when you refer to a particular copier, let's say you're referring to copy machines and you refer to a particular copier, then you use the name of the copier. But when you say the, if you say the boxer, if you say the basketball player, you are distinguishing that particular entity as being superior to all other. So it's not just the Wall Street Journal anymore, it is the journal. Okay, as I mentioned before. Okay, now let me go back now to wider analysis of these copy. And this copy has been, this particular story has been used and by many copywriters as we say, they swipe by swipe. And many times, people think that, well, this is there's something original, you have a story about two people who are similar, and then finally, two people who are similar, and then finally, you look at the difference in how, the difference in their lives according to, what took place. Okay. But I would like to suggest here that this persuasion technique is as old as the hills. In fact, if you go back to one of the oldest books in the world, which is the Bible, you find this persuasion technique being used over and over again. The Bible is made up of many, many, many stories. Okay, even though it teaches doctrines and so forth, it is made up of many, many stories. If you go to the very first book of the Bible, in Genesis, we find two brothers. And what was their names? What are the name of those two brothers? We find Cain and Abel. Okay, Cain and Abel. Okay, if you have any cursory Bible knowledge, you will know that these were two brothers. They grew up in the same garden, grew up under similar circumstances, and we find, that Cain, both were asked to bring an offering, by God. Cain brought the wrong offering. Abel brought the correct offering. In other words, then they made a wrong decision at that point. And what were results? What was the result of this situation? We find, that Cain killed his brother. Okay, the point of this the point of the story here in showing Cain and Abel, the point of the story here is that be careful about the offering that you bring to God. Be careful about the offering that you present to God. It can be the difference between life and death, a difference between accepted or not being accepted. So again, we have the story here of two brothers. Okay, we go further, a little further on in the Bible. We're still in the book of Genesis. And here we have this time now two brothers who are the same. They are actually twins. Okay, and they are who? Jacob and Esau. Okay, they are Jacob and Esau. And here the story goes how that Esau was born first, Jacob was born second. They grew up under similar circumstances, but they made different decisions in terms of where their life was going to take them. And it turns out, therefore, then that Jacob became the chosen one, and his family line was the family line that led into the Jewish people. So here again, we have a story of two brothers living under similar circumstances, making different decisions, and the different decisions that they have made led to a very large difference in the outturn of their life. Okay, then we come as well to the New Testament part of the Bible, and we have the story of the prodigal son. Okay, we have the story of the prodigal son, and this is a common, commonly known story as well too. I think it's in Luke. We find that in Luke story in Luke 15. But here we have the story of two sons, grew up under similar circumstances, and the story says that the younger son, decided that he wants to take. The younger son decided that he wants to get his inheritance before his father died, and so his father gave him his inheritance. He went off to live on his own, away from his father, wasted his inheritance, and finally came back home. And his brother wasn't very happy about the fact that he had wasted all his money and expected to be accepted in the family again. Okay, so here we have a story of two sons, two young men who grew up under similar circumstances, same home, same town, made a difference in decision and the outturn of that decision. Okay, and therefore these are stories that have been used for years and years. Now there's a pattern that I've found. If you go back 100 and 150 years, you realize that many authors of the book were a lot more familiar with the Bible than people are in this generation. And a lot of their influence of their writing came from the Bible. Now today, you find that people are less religious. People are less, people refer less and less, to the Bible. But if you go back and you read Norman Vincent Peale and so forth, all of these earlier writers and so forth, they reference to the Bible over and over again. So I know that this technique of using two people and the decisions that they have made to illustrate and to persuade, because all of these stories are used to persuade, to see the persuade is a very effective technique. Now another parable we find, a story told by Jesus, is that of the two builders. Okay, one built his house on the sand, and the other one built his house on a rock. Okay, and then what happened? The storm came, and that person who built his house on a rock stood up, and the person who built on the sand, the house went down. Okay, and there's a story of the two builders. There's a story of the two sons. Okay, who was asked to go and work in the father's vineyard. One decided he was going to go in the vineyard and work, but then changed his mind, and the other said, I'm not going to go, and then changed his mind and actually end up going. And then these two sons are used as an example to compare, the importance of, doing what is said. So what I'm trying to say then is that a lot of times, people think and say, well, this particular technique of the two young men and the decisions, the decision that they made, but this is a very old technique, as old as the Bible, as old as Genesis. Okay, as old as Genesis. And so therefore this is no way at all new. Okay, so we find therefore then that there are many reasons why this letter has been so effective. The Wall Street Journal letter has been so effective, because of its simplicity, because it's a story, and stories are very powerful. Didn't have time to talk about stories, but it is written in the form of a story, and I have a product actually on the use of stories in persuasion, and using a story. The whole idea about when you use a story kind of sneak under your defenses, because you feel as though I'm just reading a story, and therefore somebody's not actually trying to persuade me, in that respect. So, the power of using a story and so forth. And a lot of things here could be mentioned, but one of my main points I want to show here is that this idea is not new. It is as old as the hills of using, two sons or two people growing up under similar circumstances, and I think that, many times modern writers are too quick to take credit, you know, for strategies and persuasion techniques that have been there a long, long time, thousands of years even before they, you know,